The female lead tells women's stories. Remarkable, diverse, inspiring. An educational charity promoting positive female role models who show the many different routes to success and fulfillment.
So often I hear people saying, oh, how do I get started? How do I do this? How do you do it? You just start. You have to begin. And it won't be perfect and it'll be messy and it'll be hard, but you're doing something and you're on your way.
Empowering future generations of women through films and a book of 60 women donated to 18,000 schools in the UK and USA, reaching millions of young people. And through our female lead societies, we help girls to discover new role models that speak to their passions, ambitions and careers. Through our research into social media and mental health, we found a solution to the negative impact of social media on teen girls. Through a simple intervention which encouraged girls to follow different influencers, we were able to change their entire social media experience and sense of well-being. We called this campaign Disrupt Your Feed, and it reached 20 million people on social, with 330 million impressions all over the globe. So what's next? As well as inspiring girls, we're now finding ways to measurably improve the lives of older women through data, research, and the stories of those who have overcome challenges and found their own personal versions of success. We're a long way from being finished. Join us in our mission.
Are we going to talk about women's rights again? Yes, we're going to talk about it until there's balance.
Hello, hi. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Edwina.
Hello. Well, hello, everyone out there. Welcome to this week's LinkedIn Live. We are going to talk about how to promote healthy conflict resolution this week. Very important subject. To help me do that, I have the fabulous Dr. Mary Hemphill. Mary is currently in North Carolina. Near Raleigh, I believe. So many miles away, but I feel very close to you. And I'm loving your inspiration board.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Let me first introduce myself. I'm Edwina Dunn. I'm the founder of the Female Lead. We're a charity that showcases amazing, diverse women who are shaping the world around us today. And talking about women around the world, I'm just delighted to see so many people joining us from all over the world. And you too are helping us to change things. So thank you. Okay, a few words about Dr. Mary. I'm going to call you Mary, but you're Dr. Mary. You're a leadership coach, and you actually work with Nada Nazaddeen, who very kindly talked to us about emotional intelligence a couple of weeks ago. And you have lots of subjects that you can talk to, but your background is you're an author, you're a speaker, you created the 1 minute meeting, which sounds fabulous to me. I wish I had 1 minute meetings. You're also the founder of the Limitless Leader. And very importantly, you represent the state of North Carolina as the first director of computer science and technology education. Yes. So you speak to STEM and all of those amazing subjects that are leading to fantastic careers. And you have 15 years as a teacher and university professor. And you hold a PhD, of course, which is very, very important. So, Mary, welcome.
Thank you so much, Edwina, for having the opportunity to engage with all of the participants today and to talk about this topic. So just thank you. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. I wonder if you could perhaps kick us off with something around, today, right now, and why is conflict resolution so relevant and important at this moment in time?
Absolutely. And you said it correctly in terms of it being important. And even more than that, it is urgent, because what we've seen since the beginning of March is that our country and that our climate, and particularly the workplace, has truly undergone a dramatic transformation. So one of the things I think that we've always talked about is, what would it be like if we were able to offer our opportunities for employers and employees to work from home? And so again, a lot of companies and a lot of leaders were thinking about and toying with this idea. A lot of companies had really jumped in and sort of done that. However, we literally went as a people, as a global society, from working from home to living at work. So as we are in our homes, as we are thinking about the fact that this year is also the first year that we've had 5 generations working side by side in a multi-generational workforce, everyone from the traditionalists to the baby boomers, Generation Xers, millennials, and now our Generation Alpha, we are bound to have conflict, because as we have been at home, as we have navigated through COVID, as we have navigated through all of the changes in work from home directives, disrupted routines in our homes with our families, siblings, and people also learning from home, we have incubated sort of that isolation in terms of opinions. We have incubated some of the outreach and opportunities that we've had to really reach out to other individuals. Also, nerves have been on edge when we have the social media and the news coming at us, and then someone says something who has a varying idea or varying opinion to us. We sort of lash out with that negative thought or that negative conflict. So what we see now is that conflict is on the rise. Nerves and people are on edge in terms of leadership, and leaders are desperately seeking ways to effectively and efficiently be able to respond to people. And so during this time, it is not only urgent and important that we put tools in our toolbox, but that leaders now more than ever have to understand that the human condition is one that has not been discriminated against. We're all going through it, no matter if you're in the UK, the United States, Italy, Latin America, wherever. And so now more than ever, we must be able to develop relationships, to be able to develop trust, so that we can get back to the business of supporting ourselves and supporting others as we all try to figure out what does the now normal, not the new normal, but the now normal really look like.
Yeah, I mean, you say some things that you just know are true, but perhaps you haven't voiced in that way before. That's really interesting. I forgot to say at the beginning, I get to answer the questions at the beginning, but you guys get to answer them a bit later on. So do send your questions in and we will come to them. May I follow up with a question that you talk about, you write about personal ownership.
Mm-hmm.
How does this relate to conflict resolution?
Absolutely. I believe that personal ownership is perhaps the greatest way to model the way for others. So in this time of disruption, what we've seen is that leaders have been able to navigate disruption and navigate conflict in a way that has been open and transparent, because the entire world, the entire company are watching leaders make decisions on the national level, the local level, and at a corporate level. So when we are able to personally own what is happening when it comes to conflict, you're able to think aloud through that conflict. So leaders who come up along problems, and again, if any of this is, if people are following, please know that we have a free kit through Rise Up For You where we'll share all these strategies. But leaders are really able to share their secrets. Sometimes we see that meme where people say, well, that's the chapter that I wouldn't read out loud. Now is the time. Tell us, what is the thought process you went through as a corporate leader or a community leader or a nonprofit organization leader? What is the process you went through in bringing everyone to the table? What were the resources that you pulled on and said, these are the things that are going to help my company rise above? Also thinking about, this is an opportunity for you to truly accept responsibility and also think about what you could have done better. When leaders are able to personally own the conflict and personally own their position in it, what an amazing time to tell their story and show other people a different perspective and a way that they can self-reflect in a way that grows us as human beings. So I love personal ownership because it helps you get in there and dig into your leadership blind spots. It helps you grow, and you never know. You may have an employee in your company, or you may have an individual who is just waiting for you to be able to pave the way. And again, it's hard work. It's challenging work to put yourself on display and then also show people how you're growing. But when you're able to do that and you're audible about it, you're sharing, you're transparent, what an amazing time, particularly as women, for us to share our secret about how we get through and persevere with that grit and come out on the other side better. All of us.
And can you give me a few phrases that are typically, that speak to someone who's trying to do that, who's trying to sort of share and be open in that way?
Absolutely. One of the biggest phrases I like to share with leaders, and that we share at Rise Up For You, is thinking about the fact that soft skills are the way. Soft skills have become employable skills. So in that precipice where you're nervous or scared that somebody might judge you, or that you're just getting frustrated because you can't find the words, one of the biggest things I encourage leaders to do is to role play that conversation with yourself. And think about, behind closed doors, sometimes I'll stand in the mirror and I will just role play a conversation, because there's a number of different ways that it can go. But when you're able to do that, that makes the actual face-to-face or the Zoom call or the Teams call that much better. So a couple of phrases I like to say is, somebody's waiting on you to share your story. Somebody's waiting on you to take the first step. But honestly, you owe it to yourself. Leaders who postpone conflict resolution allow those seeds to get deeper, and then the narrative has completely changed. Jump on it. Do the work necessary up front. You never know the growth and success that your company or your community can benefit from by you taking that first step. And Edwina, one of the things I say to women all the time, history makers are rule breakers. Mm. It takes somebody to literally shatter that rule and say, you know what, this is not the norm. But if I don't share how I'm dealing with this conflict, or if I don't share what happened, even if it didn't go well, those non-examples are just as powerful as the conflict resolutions that do go perfectly, textbook ways.
And I guess this is the more sophisticated, the more mature way to the fact that, it is so easy to take a position and just kind of dig into that position and say, I think this, and I'm not going to change my mind.
Right. And when we do that, we literally lose the benefit of learning about another individual. So during my time as a principal, I always used to try to keep in mind, I'm not graduating my students to become teachers. Not every student that will leave this building will want to go into education. They'll want to be doctors and lawyers and cyber analysts and all types of fields. As a leader, we have to remember that too. Our employees, our followers are waiting on us to put a tool in our toolbox that we may need, not only in the corporate world, but also in our life. And so I believe that conflict always is able to kind of peel back that layer and peel back that opportunity for us as leaders to pour into our people.
It's a nice way, pour in. I rather like that. Now, what happens if conflict is centered around someone senior to you in the workplace? So they have power and they're kind of being very confrontational.
The biggest thing when it comes to conflict and you're dealing with somebody who is a supervisor, focus on the problem, not the person. So the biggest thing is to make sure that you tie that conflict back to the organizational goals or the company goals and the company data. And I used to do that a lot of times when I would try to make some changes in our school or in our district, and we had to talk with our superintendents. The one thing I would say is, sir or ma'am, Our goal as a district is to make sure that we're graduating students to the 21st century so that they are employable global citizens who understand how to work in teams and do project management. This problem is standing in the way of me making sure that our students and our teachers can be successful in that. When you're able to reposition and refocus the perspective, you really keep the focus on the problem versus the person, because it can get sort of frustrating thinking about, you want to maintain respect for that individual and you want to make sure that you give that person who is in that position the respect that is due. But when you're able to do that and tie it back to your job description, then you use conflict as a bridge versus a barrier. And so a lot of times looking back at your job description and saying, you hired me to be able to lead an organization of individuals to be able to do this. The quicker we can resolve this conflict, the quicker I can get back to the business of making sure that our employees are doing what they need to do, and I can get them the resources and a solution. And then the last thing I always say is to document, and follow up in writing and say, thank you so much for the meeting in which we discussed A, B, and C. The call to action for me will be that I'll make sure to adhere to these timelines, and I'll make sure in the future that I put these things in place. And I want to thank you for your support and your guidance along the way.
Nice. Yeah. Who's going to argue with that? That's really nice. I'm feeling comforted, and it's not even me, creating the furore.
Yes.
So I'm going to come to questions in a moment. I'm going to ask you one more.
Okay.
Then I'm going to make sure everybody knows that you've got this wonderful kit that you're going to share with everybody if they want it afterwards. And Lauren's going to make sure that people can access that afterwards. It's so generous of you. And, I know that there'll be a lot of people out there who can make use of it very positively.
Absolutely. And that kit has so many different tools in it. And again, the things that I'm sharing, it takes you step by step. So it's a really great freebie from Rise Up For You. And I encourage everybody to click on there and download that. Brilliant.
Thank you. And perhaps then, because we talked a bit before, and I don't know how many in the audience heard it, can you again remind us and explain to us the role of empathy in conflict resolution?
Absolutely. Empathy makes us feel safe. And when I think about empathy, I think about stepping into someone else's stilettos and saying, I don't just feel for you, but I have felt this situation. I felt the burden of it on my shoulders. When you're able to step into somebody else's shoes and walk in with them, you understand how important it is that you create psychological safety for the other party. And so it's a rise above sympathy. You are literally opening it up to their voice, their opinions, their perspective, and their knowledge. And you're saying what you share with me is safe. I'm not going to use your experience in this conflict against you, but I'm going to use your experience and what we share here today as we work to a solution as a data collecting tool. And I'm going to use that tool to build relationship with you and trust with you. And I think now more than ever, people are looking for hope and compassion. And that's what empathy provides them. It provides them with an opportunity to have open-ended, psychologically safe spaces to be able to grow and to productively fail. And I think a lot of times as leaders, we don't put productivity and failure in the same sentence. But when we are able to do that, we literally adopt the engineer's motto, which is hurry up and fail so we can find a bunch of ways it doesn't work to get to the way that it does. When people feel safe to do that, to fail in front and to fail out front, then you find that you are really able to get authenticity from your corporation, from your department, from your employees. You're able to get truth and honesty, and every leader can build a foundation on that truth. And the third thing is you're able to get authentic growth, and it's organic. It's the vision becomes the leader, that you almost forget about the conflict because you're so solution focused, and people need that right now. Instead of really exacerbating all the negative things, you're really able to say, let's come to the table as a human being. Let me hear your story. Know that it's safe with me, and I'm going to walk alongside you till we reach the solution.
I never heard it explained like that. It's really, really powerful. And, this psychological safety, I've never heard before. And building that relationship and trust, being solution focused. This is gold dust. I mean, we all need to practice this because it's new. It's important.
Yes, it is. And I think too, you can even create the psychological safety virtually. And a lot of people are trying to figure out, how do I connect and how do I still rise as the leader when there's conflict between employees through the screen? And there's so many ways in terms of tone, body language, communication styles. And it really stems from emotional intelligence. Like, once you're able to name that emotion, and I understand what I need to do to give you tools to really combat that emotion, that conflict loses its power. Because how many times as leaders do we play the narrative over and over? It could go this way. It could happen this way. What if they say, name the emotion, give it tools, and then you literally take its power away? And then it's like you and me versus the problem, rather than the problem sitting at the table with us, right? Disarm it and then get to solutions.
Yeah. So my extra lighting went wrong there, but it was almost like a lightning bolt.
Okay.
Piece of advice. Fantastic. Mary, I am now going to ask for some questions. So here we go. How can we deal with an individual who avoids conflicts, tends to be passive aggressive and defensive, instead of having these pragmatic discussions?
That's a good question. And I love that question, because this is an opportunity for you to reposition the you versus I. A lot of times when people are passive aggressive and defensive, that's a leadership blind spot that they are not privy to yet. So approach that conversation utilizing I statements. I feel as if this is happening. I perceive that it is impacting our company in this way. I have the opinion that. When you do that, you dismantle the opportunity they have to sort of come back at you with, well, you said. So really positioning it from an I statement is going to allow them to see how their passive aggressiveness, how their defensiveness is really impacting you in terms of making a decision that's going to make the conversation better. And then the second thing is to really open up a conversation and change the background. Now, when I was in a school or when I was in a brick and mortar before teleworking, I would always make sure two things. Never speak from behind your desk as the leader. I would always go to the sitting area with the individual, because it removes the barriers. It takes their defensive walls down, because then it's not I'm in the position of leadership and you are the follower. But then also, I would also try to take opportunities to get outside of the actual brick and mortar building. Go to Starbucks, go to a local coffee house. You'd be amazed what happens when you change the backdrop and the landscape of that conflict and people's defenses go down. So position it from the I statement. Make sure that you remove any physical or virtual barriers by leveling the playing ground. And if you can do so safely, change the background of the conversation altogether.
Great. It's there. That's what we need to do. That's great. Okay, how can we practice this through the screen?
Great question. That is and something I just really touched on too. And I've been reading a lot about how leaders are really elevating through the screen. And the first thing is to remember, we are human beings, not human doings. And so when we have moved from working from home to living at work, incorporate the conversation into what's happening in the background. So Edwina, when you talked about my background and you said, what do the different pictures say and things like that, I was able to talk about something that brings me joy. So again, we've got beautiful children. We got all the pets and the family members there. Incorporate the human being. Ask about how their day is going. Ask about how they're doing. And then here's the thing, wait for the answer. When you're able to really diffuse that conversation and address Edwina, the human being, versus Edwina, the doing, the position and the title, then you make a human connection. Watch for people who the engagement is going down. Find ways to authentically draw them back into the conversation by saying their name or sending them a private chat and say, hey, you look a little tired today. Is there anything I can do to support you during this time? Or is there anything I can help you with? We have to stop asking why and ask specific questions. How can I support you today? What is it I can do in my position to make sure you have what you need today? So even though we are through the screen and we can't feel the energy, I miss that so much, feeling the energy in the room. There are things we can do when it comes to soft skills and when it comes to true human connection as human beings through the screen that will continue to draw people in, even through conflict.
And you've definitely got yourself on that board behind you there with Live Your Dream, which is just gorgeous, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Lovely. Here we go. We have another one. What habits can we start to acquire in our toolbox ahead of time to better position ourselves and our companies when conflicts arise?
Absolutely. So I always go with the 3 A's. Okay. The first thing is to appropriately name emotions. Again, you would be surprised how many adults are walking through their professional journey and they understand that perhaps their emotion is anger, but it's really not anger. It's just stress that's being manifested from other things happening in their life. So strong emotional intelligence is a tool we can put into our toolbox right now. And when we address emotional intelligence and say, you know what, as a leader, I felt sad today. Here were the powerful walkaway statements I told myself. Here were the awesome affirmations. And listen, as a leader, create affirmations and post them around the building or put them in your email signature. These are free and easy ways to address emotional intelligence. The second thing is to make sure you don't avoid the conflict. And I'm going to go back to this because I say this all the time. I just completed a group session with a phenomenal group of city leaders. And one of the leaders just seemed disengaged. He didn't feel like he wanted to be a part of the conversation. I could tell from his body language he didn't want to be a part of the conversation. When I was able to have a one-on-one with him, he was talking about conflict he was holding on to from 3 years prior that the leader had left unaddressed. So I encourage leaders, address it now and be urgent in that fact. And you can go ahead and acquire that habit by making sure you have open, honest, productively, or psychologically safe places virtually and face-to-face. And then the last thing is, and I always say this, ask open-ended questions. Go ahead and create an arsenal of how and why questions. You'd be amazed at the conversation and discussion that happens when you ask how or why versus asking what and who. Because yes or no questions are not going to get me to learn any more about you or how you feel about the conflict. But open-ended questions will give me so much data and so much perspective and insight so we can get to a solution.
And I think also I've discovered that leaving some space in conversations, you know, there's a sort of, I don't know, there's a gentleness to it that if you can do it, it allows people to say what's on their mind. We tend to fill that space, don't we, so quickly, you know, and it feels kind of, you know, urgent. And then we all get this sort of urgent feeling that we've got to really hurry up.
Exactly. And it's too, conflict is also being comfortable with the silence. And I think the one thing that, you know, COVID did bring us was that we had to get very comfortable with being inside of ourselves. And so when we get to these virtual spaces, or even when we transition after post-pandemic, we have to understand that there's still amazingness that can happen in the silence. Give people an opportunity to think. Let the information marinate. Let's not rush people to get to a solution just because it feels good and we want to tick it off. Because checklists don't create conflict. Conversations really resolve the conflict. And so if you just check it off and say, it's done, you've missed a grand opportunity to really learn more about yourself and learn how you can move your company and the people in it forward.
Brilliant. Sharon asks, when you're part of a minority identity in the workplace, it's sometimes the case that the leader is unable to see the cause of conflict may be directly related to one's identity. How can you tackle this?
Oh, yes. And that is a big one, and one that we've seen on the global stage as well when it comes to minority identity. And I will say this, Sharon, using the power of the story. So when you are able to share your story in terms of how the climate, how the corporate culture, how the soft skills or lack thereof are benefiting and or hindering you in the workplace, no one can take that story from you, Sharon. And so as a minority, what we need to make sure is that we're telling our story with truth, and we're telling our story and tying it back to, and I mentioned this earlier, tying it back to our job description, tying it back to the company goals. So if you're part of a company or part of an organization where their goal and vision in the onboarding, and something that they always talk about, is making sure that their employees have the resources, have the support that they need, tell your story in a way that shows, hey, this is a gap. And not that it's a glaring gap, but it's one that exists, and it's one that's keeping me from reaching my full potential. And Sharon, when you tell that story, also come with a solution and say, one of the things I thought about in terms of this gap that I'm experiencing is perhaps we could have a resource employee group, or an opportunity for us to elevate and share resources in our field. And so that's part of that soft skills that we talk a lot about at Rise Up For You when it comes to conflict and when it comes to storytelling and emotional intelligence. And also remembering that in conflict, when it comes to speaking on behalf of the whole, everyone is individual, everyone is unique. So the way that the conflict hits Sharon may not be the way that it hits Mary, which may be completely different for Edwina. And going back to being psychologically safe, that has to be okay, because that's the truth that we're living, and that's the truth that we're leading in.
Mm. Very good. Very good. Do we have time for one more? There are lots of questions. Oh, here we go. This is our last one, Mary.
Okay.
What are the key indicators that signal conflict?
Yes. So the biggest thing that signal conflict is that you kind of see the work, the collaboration, or the communication grinding to a halt. And even through the screen, I love that question, you can feel the tension. So there's a difference between productive silence and then disengagement, right? There's a difference between you have been ticking and going, everybody's on their Google Doc and they're giving all of their input and things. And then you start to say, okay, everybody's late on, identifying a solution, or everybody's late on identifying their resources. So one of the key indicators is that you're going to see that communication becomes very difficult, whereas before it seemed to be flowing. And this can happen whether it's an email, e-communication, face-to-face, or even virtually. You're also going to see collaboration come to a halt. When you start to see people problems rise above what it is that you're trying to do in terms of a product or a goal for a client. And by people problems, I mean, you get that email and it says, so-and-so's been late today. So-and-so and the person A and person B are having conflict. Can you step in? When you look at your calendar and you see more people problems than productive solution seeking, that's when you know that there's conflict. And that is the time to be preventive versus reactive. Pull a couple people to the side, ask them to join a lunch and learn with you, and really start to get to the bottom of it before it explodes and becomes something that's going to take you an exorbitant amount of time to be able to solve.
Wonderful. Well, it's been such a joy to talk to you, Dr. Mary Hemphill. Thank you so much. You've been amazing. And I also want to remind everybody that we will be sharing not only links to you, but also this wonderful toolkit that you have offered up. So thank you so much for doing that. Before I say a final goodbye, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you. I just wanted to say, before we say a final goodbye, I just want to remind everyone, well, one, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and learnt some new things as I did. Next week, our LinkedIn Live is with Lauren Sweeney, also from your fabulous collection. And she's going to talk to us about how to take the stage. Something we all have to do from time to time. Very, very scary. So until next week, see you all then. And Mary, thank you so much. You've been wonderful.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Edwina, and I hope everyone continues to have a great day and stay safe.